Senator Fischer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your service. It is appreciated by all of us. Secretary Carter, you stated that the United States will not ignore attempts to interfere with our democratic processes, which I believe is in reference to the recent cyber attacks on political parties, candidates, and election systems. By that, do you mean that costs will be imposed on those responsible for these attacks?
Sadly, the reference is a very broad one. I made it in Europe and was speaking to that audience very broadly to include the issue you stated, but which is a concern they all have and we have at NATO. The broader category is called hybrid warfare. It ranges from little green men to people interfering in democratic process. That's a concern that I was discussing with allies when I was over there. And it's part of the way NATO's going to have to adapt to the world as it really is. And yes, we're going to have to defend ourselves against.
So costs would be imposed for cyber attacks.
That is like any other attack.
Do you think that, with regards to cyber, that this should be done in a public way so that the penalties are clearly visible to other potential attackers in the future?
Well, I certainly think that we need to defend ourselves and then take action against perpetrators when we identify them, and that is in appropriate ways. I simply mean that because the perpetrators of cyber attacks range from, and cyber intrusions range from nation states to cutouts to hackers to criminal gangs, and it's quite a variety. And it's why our highest priority in cyber, and including in our cyber command, is defense of our own networks.
Right. It has been widely reported that Russian hackers are responsible for the penetration that we've seen at the Democratic National Committee, those computer systems. When we look at leaks of the DNC emails and documents, I guess the questions continue to persist regarding the strength of that connection between the hackers and Russian officials, and it is generally accepted that the affiliation exists. If this is true, that there is this connection out there, what is clear is that it's, to me, another very public instance, and this time using cyber, where Russia continues their aggression towards this country and towards our interests. And when we have an adversary who so brazenly strikes at the heart of our democratic process, I think that indicates how low they believe the cost of that behavior is going to be. So in other words, I think we've possibly lost the deterrence factor when it comes to cyber attacks. Would you agree with that?
We can't lose deterrence effect ever. And with respect to Russia, one of the emphases, stresses we made in our budget, and by the way, this is one of the reasons why we would appreciate having our budget passed as is, to get back to an earlier question, is because it prioritizes something we haven't had to do, Senator, as you're stressing, for a quarter of a century, which is, it used to be, we haven't had as a major component of our defense strategy countering the possibility of Russian aggression. Now we do. That's why we're making investments, and it ranges from cyber to the European Reassurance Initiative, which is one of the things that we hope doesn't get affected in the budget.
And I apologize for interrupting you. The chairman's strict on time. But dealing with cyber, when we look at cyber, do you have plans that you have given to this administration, or plans available to provide the administration with flexibility in dealing with cyber? Specifically, how do we address such attacks, whether they are from a nation state, whether they are from organized crime, or whether they are from individuals. Are there plans out there on how these attacks are going to be addressed, whether through deterrence or actual actions? And are those plans updated as we continue to see the expansion of cyber attacks on this country?
That's a very good question, and we're just discussing here because there are many aspects to the answer to this. But yes, we have a lot of cyber capabilities that we are building, developing in all the services and at Cyber Command, and more generally for the Russians. Let me ask the chairman to add something.
Senator, for exactly the reason you're raising, we're in the process of rewriting at the Secretary's direction a more broad framework for dealing with Russia and contingencies associated with Russia. It's also the reason why our national military strategy now will be a classified document, because what we're trying to do is provide a strategic framework to deal with the full range of behavior that we may see from a state like Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And in some cases, a cyber attack may not beget a cyber response. We want to make sure our National Command Authority has a full range of options to deal with something that has been determined, in fact, a violation of our sovereignty and an attack in cyberspace. So there's really two things. One, the strategic framework we're working on, and then we're also working on a full range of tools, cyber tools, so that we have both the ability to protect our own network and to take the fight to the enemy in cyberspace as required, our offensive cyber capabilities. So I would tell you that the issue that you're outlining really is being addressed in both a strategic framework as well as physical tools that we're developing. But again, it's not just focused on cyber. It's focused on providing the Secretary and the President a full range of options with which to respond in the event of an attack, again, whether it be cyber or anything else.
I thank you for that, and I think the deterrence aspect of cyber response is very, very important, that we keep that, and also that public responses make an impression as well. Thank you, sir.
Senator Sullivan.